Close your eyes for a second and enter a medieval survival game. You are trapped, but you still have choices. 3 paths open before you: rescue, God's judgment, or oblivion. One promises immediate pain, another buys time. The last kills slowly. At every step, hunger, disease, and shame surround your name. Today we will discover how this system used fear to rule, and in the end, you decide which fate you would courageously face. Embrace the darkness. The story begins now. You opened your eyes in the darkness and chose to continue then, before the first step. Understand the rules that govern your destiny. Here, prison is not the end of your sentence. It is a waiting room. There is no calendar. There are distant bells and iron doors. You don't serve years. You await a verdict that can change with a whisper. Who decides what happens to you? The lord of the manor, the cleric who reads God's will, the judge who speaks to the square, sometimes the jailer with the key in one hand and the other open for coins. Your truth weighs little. What matters is hierarchy, your family's reputation, market gossip, the usefulness of your body as an example to the crowd. The cell is limbo, a corridor between 3 doors. Ransom when someone pays for you and buys time. God's judgment when fire and water respond in your name. Oblivion, when your name fades while you breathe. Nothing here aims to correct. Everything here aims to discipline. Fear is the official language, and it speaks through irons, silences, and watching eyes. Keep this in mind. Every choice has a price, and the price is rarely fair. Now that you know the game board, let's face the first door and discover how money promises freedom. And for this promise, it often charges more than you imagine. You stop before the first door, the door of ransom, because the promise is simple. Money opens locks, but here nothing is simple. The price begins before the key turns. A fee to keep you breathing. A fee for your own chain. A fee for stale bread. The jailer knows every figure, and each figure grows as the family knocks on the tower door. To get out, you need someone to put their name in yours, a guarantor. They don't sign out of pity. They want guarantees, land, cattle, a trade, favors. If you're a peasant, you offer what you have, almost nothing, which leaves you trapped even outside. You're noble. You send messages and coins, buy time, talk to the judge in the hallway, and the hallway is worth more than the courtroom. Negotiations proceed in whispers. The jailer asks for an advance. The scribe charges for the paper. The messenger charges for the trip. The lord of the manor charges for listening. Each day in the cell is an addition that becomes a debt, a prison debt, that haunts you even after your freedom. The ransom promises release, but it comes with an invisible rope that ties your future. Imagine the scene. Your sister arrives with a bundle of coins and a ring from her mother. The guarantor smiles without showing his teeth. He promises an open door, signs, and the signature. Also writes your new servitude. You step out, breathing moonlit air, but you don't own your own pace. You owe the guarantor, you owe the jailer, you owe those who witnessed your agreement. With each harvest, a piece goes toward the debt. With each delay, a rumor arises in the market. The mark isn't made of iron, it's made of numbers. Still, many choose this door because the other is worse. When the coins run out, when no one puts their name forward for you, the city points to the sky and says, "Let God decide." And that's when fire, water, and iron begin to speak in your place. When the coins run out and no one puts their name forward for you, they point to the sky and say, "Let God decide." You are taken to the square or the church atrium. The cleric prays, the judge watches. The crowd holds its breath. The verdict will come from your body, not from your words. First, the water ties your hands, sometimes your feet, and the dive decides. If you sink, they say the water receives you, a sign of innocence. If you float, the water rejects you, a sign of guilt. It seems simple, but the cold paralyzes, the rope holds, the panic weighs heavily. Some emerge alive, almost all are scarred. There's also the red-hot iron. They place an iron in the fire until it turns red. The cleric chants prayers. You walk a few steps or touch the skin for a moment. Then they wrap your hand in cloth and wait days. If the wound is clean, they call it proof of innocence. If it becomes inflamed, they say God has revealed the guilt. The detail is that the environment, the haste, the hygiene, The will of those who interpret everything changes fate. A well-done bandage for a nobleman, a dirty bandage for you. And the same burn tells different stories. The ordeal is faith transformed into a test, and a test transformed into a spectacle. The public learns through fear. The judge preserves order. The cleric legitimizes the right. You have no technical defense. Your body trembles before the fire and water. Sometimes they allow an oath, sometimes they offer fasting and prayers. The outcome is almost always skewed by your social standing and the rumors of the market. If you survive and are found guilty, the town is convinced that justice has been served. If you survive and are declared innocent, you return home as if you escaped a miracle. But the miracle doesn't pay your debts. And when the horde doesn't elicit the confession they expect, when silence persists, the court exchanges the sacred, 4 gears, and you discover how fear speaks without water or fire. It speaks with ropes, wheels, and wood. For many, neither fire nor water decides. Time decides. When the horde doesn't come, when the guarantor doesn't appear, you return to the same cold stone. This is the 3rd door, oblivion. Here there is no sentence, only waiting. The day begins with metal opening and closing. A piece of bread, murky water, the jailer's counting of steps. You learn to measure the time by the distant bell and the worsening smell. The light doesn't enter, so you memorize the sound. The leak, the rat, the neighbor's moan. Hunger doesn't strike like a blow. It gnaws at you from within. Your body grows thin, your head spins, your skin itches. Clothes turn into scabs, damp straw turns into beds, and illness, dysentery, fever, and a cough that keeps you awake. Many don't leave for trial. They're carried to a mass grave. When they open the door, it's not always for justice, sometimes for service. You clean hallways, carry water, chop wood. It's not kindness, it's convenience. Each task is another way of saying you still have strength. So, you can wait longer. Limbo takes advantage of everything. Oblivion also has books falling on you. The ones about debts charge you for your chain, your bread, the space you occupy. Even without leaving, you owe. If you ever leave, the mark won't be made of iron. It will be made of numbers. Your name returns to the street with an invisible rope around your neck. Your mind cracks before your body. You talk to walls. You promise yourself that tomorrow you'll scream for a judge, then swallow your voice to save breath. You think about your family and their fear of saying your name out loud. The silence of the city enters through the crack in the door and finishes erasing its history. Some leave signs, a scratch on the stone, a cross, a misspelled word, small screams that try to deceive oblivion. They say, "I existed," and sometimes these scratches outlive those who made them. But limbo doesn't last forever. One day the key turns differently. If it's not the fever that decides, it's the public. The door opens, the shackles creak, and the corridor pushes you into the brightness of the square. Outside, justice isn't a secret. It's a spectacle. The brightness of the square blinds you for a second. Then the sound arrives. Auctions, footsteps, children on shoulders, bells. A sign hanging on your chest sums you up in one word: thief, heretic, traitor. The nuance doesn't matter. The example matters. Today you are the lesson. The stage is set. The judge stands tall, the scribe ready. The air is silent with his hand raised. The cleric observes as if translating the will of God. They read the charges in a firm voice. They repeat your name so the city remembers. The law here functions like theater. Every word has its place, every gesture has its effect. The audience didn't come to doubt, they came to learn through fear. They ask if you confess. Confession is the queen of trials, they say. If you admit, they promise mercy. Maybe only branding, maybe only loss of property, maybe only exile. The only changes in size depending on your position. A nobleman buys witnesses and time. A peasant buys silence with what he doesn't have. Your version carries little weight before the din of the market and the Lord's gaze. Witnesses appear as if from thin air. A neighbor swears he saw. A merchant remembers a detail. A priest says you were already disturbing him. Little paper, much voice. Your defense fits into one sentence, and it is lost when the crowd reacts. The audience doesn't decide the sentence, but creates the atmosphere that legitimizes it. Sometimes they offer you an oath, touch the relic, promise on your soul, Sometimes they let someone speak for you. Almost always, the decision is already made before the bell rings. The square wants closure, the judge wants order, the cleric wants an example, and if the confession doesn't come, the script changes. The high air announces the intermission, but the show isn't over. When words don't deliver what they expect, they make the body speak. The runner that leaves the square doesn't take you home. It takes you to the room where the truth is wrung out with ropes, wheels, and wood. It's there that fear becomes method. The runner doesn't take you home. It takes you to the place where words end and the body is forced to speak. The door closes. The sound of the square becomes a memory and the smell of hot iron fills the air. Here, justice has tools. The pistol begins the dialogue. They tie your wrists, lift you until you almost touch the ceiling, and release you in calculated jerks. Your shoulder cracks, your muscle screams. The world shrinks to a point of fire behind your eyes. It's not to kill, it's to give in. If the rope doesn't work, they stretch you out on the rack. Rollers pull your arms and legs millimeter by millimeter. The executioner listens to your body like someone tuning an instrument. One more turn, one thirsty tendon, and each centimeter buys a word you might not even have. Then come the boots, iron boards strapped to your legs, wedges pounded until the bone cries out for help. Then come the thumb crushers, small presses that transform fingers into confessions. To those watching from afar, they are tools. To those feeling them, they are alphabets of pain. Nothing here is improvised. The executioner inherited his craft and protocol, charges for each instrument used, takes notes silently, waits for the judge's signal. Sometimes the payment buys care, a looser knot, a clean cloth on the wound. Sometimes it buys only the illusion of choice. The final record needs a sentence, he confessed, and the city sleeps peacefully. It doesn't always happen in the basement. In certain accusations, part of the torment is public. Floggings in the square, hot iron touching skin while children watch from their parents' shoulders. Pain as a lesson. The body of the accused becomes a poster. The city learns from fear. Some resist, not out of courage, but out of exhaustion. The mind protects itself by running away. Others say anything. Names, places, invented sins. The truth collapses when pain becomes the only language understood. And yet surviving doesn't mean returning. The mark remains in the way you walk, in your work, on your skin, in your form as they say your name. When they're done, the silence weighs more heavily than the chains. You return to the cell without knowing which part of you remained in the room. And that's when the show needs its final act. The written confession, the judge satisfied, the square waiting. The verdict comes, and with it the way the city will remember or erase its history. The verdict lands like a hammer on the table, and you understand. The torment chamber did not speak alone. Now the city demands an end. The scribe reads, "Your guilt has a form and a timetable, and the executioner already knows the way. If the paper says death, the route is public. The gallows awaits the common people, a short rope, a dry fall. For nobles, the blade, a head that falls and preserves a shred of honor. For heretics and witches, the fire, stacked wood, flames that want to erase the error and write an example in the sky. Sometimes the wheel, bones broken little by little, a body transformed into a prolonged lesson. The execution doesn't end when the heart falls silent. The body becomes a message, hung from the orca for days, scattered at city gates, burned until it becomes dust that no one collects. The name disappears from the books. The family learns to speak softly. The child changes paths so as not to cross the shadow of their past. If the paper doesn't say death, it unmarks. Hot iron on the skin, letters that don't peel off the face. Work slips away, the bank suspects. The village points its finger. You step onto the street free, yet you walk with invisible shackles. Banishment seems like an option, but exile is a prison without walls. Each door closed, reminding you of what you carry on your face. The sentences that bind you endlessly. Prolonged imprisonment, a return to the cold stone. Now with the weight of official shame. You breathe, but breathe inward so as not to disturb. Prison debts continue to pile up. The guarantor demands, the jailer demands, survival itself demands. And then there's the silent fate. When you're swallowed by the cell before the verdict itself. You die without a square, without a bell, without a farewell. A mass grave receives the body, and the world moves on as if nothing happened. Forgetting works quickly, and that's what the system wants. For the lesson to remain, for the name to disappear. Everything ends, they say, but what ends on paper remains in the bodies of the living. on the empty table in your home, in the story your family avoids telling. The show dismantles, the square returns to the market, and the city writes another line of order. Now look back at the three paths offered to you: ransom, God's judgment, oblivion. After seeing the price of each, which one truly saved someone, you heard the sentence and watched the stage dismantle. Then it's time to fulfill the promise and answer the question that lingered. Among the three doors, the one that opened the most wasn't a miracle, it was a coin and an outstretched hand. Those with influential families, valuable professions, patrons in the city bought time, guarantors, paperwork, and backroom chatter. Ransom saved more lives, but not for free. Freedom came with an invisible leash, a debt that crippled crops, favors that bound more than shackles, a mandatory silence to keep breathing. For those without a net or resources, the order rarely absolved. Water and fire seemed impartial, but the hand that binds and the hand that interprets twisted fate. Sometimes an innocent man would emerge alive, almost never clean. And oblivion, that promised nothing. It only dragged the body along until the fever decided, or until the name faded before death itself. So yes, the best chance of survival lay outside the square, where coins spoke softly and rings wrote sentences. But surviving here wasn't about winning. It was about accepting a price that continued to be exacted every day. Your skin might not burn, your neck might not feel the rope. Still, the mark remained in the bill to be paid, in the lost work, in the gaze that followed you down the street. This is the answer the city doesn't say aloud. Justice saved those who were already saved. And if you managed to escape, it was because someone profited from your breath. Now, before you move on, keep this thought within yourself, because history doesn't end in the century of torches. It continues where fear still organizes the line, and where punishment still prefers the lesson to the return. Do you know which door saved the most? So look with me at the present. The century has changed, but the method still breathes. Yesterday's rescue has a different name today. Bail and net, those who have it pay and return home. Who doesn't have to wait in limbo? The order has traded iron and water for paperwork, headlines and agreements that demand confessions to shorten the suffering. The spectacle has left the square and entered the screens. Comments become leather, reputation becomes sentence before the judge, and oblivion remains effective. Overcrowded cells hidden from view, numbers that swallow names, families that speak softly to keep living. The mark hasn't disappeared either. It just moved to a different location on the resume, on the address they reject, on the check they never forget. They say the system corrects, but it still uses fear to organize the queue. It still rewards those who arrive with sponsors. It still punishes long after the paper says it's over. You may not see the torch, but you feel the heat when someone is reduced to a word, when the city demands an example and the person becomes a poster child. So I ask you, do we punish to correct or to forget? Justice is closing the door with relief, or making room for someone to return whole. If it were you, which door would this century let you walk through? If any part of this journey sparked a question in you, don't let it fade now. Leave a like. This shows me that it's worth continuing to open doors that many people prefer to keep closed. Subscribe to walk with me in the next stories, and tell me in the comments which forgotten life you want to see here. A peasant in the midst of the plague, an anonymous soldier in the Crusades, or another that intrigues you. If someone came to mind while watching, share this video with them. You might be the reason someone else remembers what should not be forgotten. And since you've come this far, don't stop at the door. Continue the journey by clicking on the video that's now appearing on the screen. I'll wait for you there, M.